No, because so many people are out for various reasons. By Monday, I want you guys to have read through chapter 14 and attempted to answer the questions. All right? As we read, I want you to kind of pay attention to these items. All right? If you see anything that you feel is a reference to teeth or eyes, okay, or any of the elements like fire, water, air, earth, all of these things I want you to just kind of make a note of. You can make a note of it in your book. You can make a note of it in your notes. Additionally, birds, another thing, birds. So I want you to pay attention to those things as we kind of carry on. Yesterday, we were in the middle of reading the Korah chapter when we had to stop. We left off on what's my page 22, which is right here. Well, folks are different, he said. All right, and this is a Korah chapter, and Korah is talking to her husband, Vernon, whom she references as Mr. Toll. I should hope so. I have tried to live right in the sight of God and man for the honor and comfort of my Christian husband and the love and respect of my Christian children, so that when I lay me down in the consciousness of my duty and reward, I will be surrounded by loving faces, carrying the farewell kiss of each of my loved ones into my reward. Not like Addie Bundren, dying alone, hiding her pride and her broken heart. Glad to go, lying there with her head propped up so she could watch Cash building the coffin, having to watch him so he wouldn't skimp on it, like as not with those men not worrying about anything except if there was time to earn another $3 before the rain come and the river got too high to get across it. Like as not, if they hadn't decided to make that last load, they would have loaded her into the wagon on a quilt and crossed the river first and then stopped to give her time to die what Christian death they would let her. All right, so here we have some foreshadowing up here. This is some foreshadowing of what is to come. So it's foreshadowing trouble in terms of what? Troubles in terms of what? It's okay to guess.
Like the river?
The river, yeah. Because if the rain comes and the rain comes hard, what's going to happen to the river? It's going to flood. So we're foreshadowing that there's going to be some problems there. So she says that they should have carried Addie across the river prior to the rain and let her die there. All right. Except Darrell. It was the sweetest thing I ever saw. Sometimes I lose faith in human nature for a time. I am assailed by doubt, but always the Lord restores my faith and reveals to me his bounteous love for his creatures. Not Jewel, the one she had always cherished, not him. He was after that $3 extra. It was Darrell, the one that folks say is queer, lazy, pottering about the place no better than Anne's, with Cash a good carpenter and always more building than he can get around to, and Jewel always doing something that made him some money or got him talked about, and that near-naked girl always standing over Addie with the fan, so that every time a body tried to talk to her and cheer her up, would answer for her right quick, like she was trying to keep anybody from coming near her at all. It was Darrell. He come to the door and stood there, looking at his dying mother. He just looked at her, and I felt the bounteous love of the Lord again and his mercy. I saw that with Jewel she had just been pretending, but that it was between her and Darrell that the understanding and the true love was. He just looked at her, not even coming in where she could see him and get upset, knowing that Anne's was driving him away and he would never see her again. He said nothing, just looking at her. "What you want, Darrell?" Dewey Dell said, not stopping the fan, speaking up quick, keeping even him from her. He didn't answer. He just stood and looked at his dying mother, his heart too full for words. All right, so going back and kind of looking over what Korah says, she says she really likes Darrell, all right? She thinks that he's very sweet. She's always said he's different from the others, that he has a natural affection. She said, she even recognizes that Addie kind of doted on Jewel, even though he would throw fits and tantrums, all right? But that he's not the one telling her goodbye. It's Darrell, all right? And she says, that Jewel is a Bundren through and through, loving nobody, caring for nothing except how to get something with the least amount of work. All right, why is that passage interesting?
It's saying they're lazy.
All of the Bundrins are lazy. He's saying that. But she's talking about Jewel. All right, so why is that interesting? Read the underlined part in terms of Jewel. Huh? Jewel's not a Bundrin. Yeah. Because his father is not Anne's Bundrin. Alright? So she says that Jewel is a Bundrin through and through. He doesn't love anybody. He's lazy. All of this. He wants to get things with the least amount of work. But what Cora doesn't realize is that Jewel is not a Bundrin. Alright? So, she is kind of criticizing their decision to take this load of lumber in order to make $3. All right, she talks about how she has come over as much as she can, even though that's not something she should be given credit for. All right. Then she begins to talk about where they're burying Addie, and she totally disapproves because she says, I would want to be buried with my husband and my children, whereas Addie does not. She wants to be married with her people from Jefferson. She doesn't want to be buried with her husband and children. All right. And so we have some disapproval of that. All right. So then moving on, she's talking about watching Cash. All right. And how Addie has to keep an eye on him building the coffin so that he won't skimp on it. But truly, that's not what's going on. Cash is doing it outside of her window so that he can get that approval. All right. But she does say that people talk about Darl. They say he's queer and he's lazy and he's no better than Anne's. Queer isn't strange. There's something strange about Darl. All right. It was Darl, and he came to the door and he looked at her. And so, how does Cora feel about the Bundrins?
They're not her favorites.
She doesn't like them. But which one does she approve of? Darl. She does approve of Darl. All right, and from this we get some information about some of these characters. Okay, so Cora, how could we describe her? Like she's passing judgment on them. Judgmental. And we find out that she says that folks say that Darl is strange. Okay, so far we've met Darl, and he has this ability to tell things that he's not there to witness. Okay, we've met Cora, the judgmental neighbor. All right. We have met Jewel, and he's just, kind of full of anger, and he's very, impetuous. But now, in the next chapter, we are meeting Dewey Dell, and this is the daughter. Okay? The first time me and Laugh picked on down the row. Period. Pa doesn't sweat because he will catch his death from the sickness, so everybody that comes to help us. And Jewel don't care about anything. He is not kin to us in caring, not care kin. And Cash likes sawing the long, hot, sad yellow days up into planks and nailing them to something. And Pa thinks because neighbors will always treat one another that way, because he's always been too busy letting neighbors do for him to find out. And I did not think that Darl would, that sits at the supper table with his eyes gone further than the food and the lamp, full of the land dug out of his skull and the holes filled with distance beyond the land. Okay, Dewey Dell is telling us a whole lot, even though it makes very little sense. Okay? The first thing is the first time me and Laugh picked on down the row. What is she talking about? Cotton.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. Yeah, they're picking crops. Okay, so she's talking literally about picking crops, but something happened when they were picking crops. All right? So we don't know exactly what happened, but she implies that something happened there and it's on her mind. So we're going to get back to that, hopefully. But then she starts describing her family members. She's talking about her father and how he doesn't sweat because he's going to catch the death from sickness. So everybody comes to them to help them. Okay? So her family, she recognizes, reliant on help from others because her father does not get up and help do things. Did y'all see that? And she says, and Jewel don't care about anything. He's not kin to us in caring, not care kin. What is she saying about Jewel?
He's not family the way that matters.
Yeah, she said, even though she may not know that he's not Anne's son, she recognizes there's something different about him from the rest of the family. There is something different about Jewel from the rest of the family. He's detached. All right? And Cash likes sawing the long, hot, sad yellow days up into planks and nailing them to something. So Cash likes to build things. And Pa thinks because neighbors will always treat one another that way because he has always been too busy letting neighbors do for him to find out. And, Pa's always been lazy, so he just assumes that people will keep coming helping because that's what they've always done, and he's never done anything to find out any different. And I did not think that Darrell would. That sits at the supper table with his eyes gone further than the food and the lamp, full of the land dug out of his skull and the holes filled with distance beyond the land. All right, I am going to wait here for an uncomfortable amount of time for y'all to tell me what you think she's talking about. And if you need to go back and look at your notes, including the PowerPoint slides for help, that might offer some help. But I want someone to tell me, what do you think she is telling us about Darrell here? Maybe he has a head injury. All right. What makes you think that? What?
The skull and totally not because it was written in Sunny's book.
The skull and what?
Totally not because it was written in Sunny's book.
Oh, totally not because it was written in Sunny's. Okay, so what happened to him?
He was in World War I, a veteran maybe.
Maybe he was a veteran. Maybe he was in the war and he had a head injury. Okay? And the land dug out of his skull. So maybe he was hit with like something and they had to clean out his head. Okay? So he's not quite right. Do y'all see that? So perhaps he was a veteran. Perhaps Darrell was in World War I, and he has had some sort of an accident or something.
Could it just be like traumatic?
It could be. It could be both. Mm-hmm. All right. I want y'all to pay really close attention to this, because I do think that what is going on here, even though it's not something that you guys probably have ever experienced picking on down a row. Have y'all ever picked a garden? Raise your hand if you've picked a garden. Good. That makes me happy. All right. I plant a garden every summer. All right. I'm big about it. All right. We picked on down the row. The wood's getting closer and closer. And the secret shade. Picking on into the secret shade with my sack and Laugh's sack. Because I said, will I or won't I, when the sack was half full. Because I said, if the sack is full when we get to the woods, it won't be me. I said, if it don't mean for me to do it, the sack will not be full, and I will turn it the next row. But if the sack is full, I cannot help it. It will be that I had to do it all the time, and I cannot help it. And we picked on toward the secret shade, and our eyes would drown together, touching on his hands and my hands, and I didn't say anything. I said, what are you doing? And he said, I am picking into your sack. And so it was full when we came to the end of the row, and I could not help it. And so it was because I could not help it. What has happened here? Do y'all know what's going on? Because it was written in your book?
No, it's pretty obvious.
Okay. So what's going on?
She's little.
Yes. All right. Why?
Because her sack was full, so she would have to move on.
Exactly. Okay. So they have a sack, and like they would have something like a strap where they could wear it, and they would have like a piece of like twig or metal or something that would keep it open, so they could fill it up. You know, they could use both hands to pick, and they could just drop it down into their sack. Okay, and so she and Laugh are both out in the fields and they're picking crops, and I'm just assuming it's cotton, okay? And do you remember back in the middle school when you would like someone, and what you would do would be you would look at them until they looked at you, and then you would look away real fast? Y'all can laugh, but you know what I'm talking about. Am I right? Yeah. Okay. So they're kind of like their eyes are meeting, and you know they have that whole connection, and you know there's like sparks flying or whatever, and somehow it's kind of understood that he wants to go off into the woods with her, and she's like, okay, I know I shouldn't do that because I'm not married to this guy, so I want to, but I shouldn't, but I want to, but I shouldn't because it's wrong. So she's like, all right, here's the deal. If my sack is full when I get to the end of the row, I have to go off with him. It's just because it's fate. So she's like making excuses. Well, he's picking into her sack, helping her fill it up, without knowing that she is kind of making this wager in her head. Okay? So when she goes off with him, she says, and so it was because I could not help it, meaning the sack was full, it was out of my hands. She is doing the same thing we talked about earlier, where she is not taking acceptance of her actions. You know, she's not taking any responsibility. So she goes off into the secret shade, and she and Laugh have their dotted line relationship, which is how I refer to sex. All right? Euphemistically. What, dotted line relationship? Yeah. Okay, so they have their dotted line relationship, which means they're not married. All right? So it was then, and then I saw Darrell, and he knew. So what does Darrell know? What they've done. How does he know? Huh? No, he didn't see them.
Oh,
But he always knows stuff.
Because he always knows stuff. He has that kind of omniscient power of just knowing things. Now, is he really like supernaturally telepathic?
No, he
Or-
saw two people in this secret shade and was like, oh, that's what they're doing.
Or-
They're not exactly hiding it.
Okay. Or does he have, like, let's pretend that he's not there at all. He's not in the field. Does he have the ability to look at people and say, something's different? Read their body language, read their attitude. So we really don't know about Darrell, but those are some different possibilities there. Okay. He said he knew without the words, like he told me that Ma is going to die without the words. And I knew he knew, because if he had said he knew with the words, I would not have believed that he had been there and saw us. But he said he did, and I said, are you going to tell Pa? Are you going to kill him? Without the words, I said it, and he said, why? Without the words. And that's why I can talk to him with knowing, with hating, because he knows. Okay, so she feels like they've had this entire conversation just by looking at each other. Like, she's guilty. She's like, are you going to tell Dad? He's like, looking at her. But they're really not having that conversation. She just kind of assumes that those thoughts are passing between them. Okay? He stands in the door looking at her. What do you want, Darrell? I say. She's going to die, he says. And old Turkey Buzzard Tull coming to watch her die, but I can fool them. When is she going to die, I say. Before we get back, he says. Then why are you taking Jewel, I say. I want him to help me load, he says. Okay, so she and Darrell have this communication that they know that Addie is going to die while they're gone taking this load. And Darrell's like, well, I want Jewel to help me load. Even though he knows that Jewel's going to be upset to be gone when she passes. Why do you think he takes him anyway?
Because he's Addie's favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's look at our questions. What secret is Dewey Dell thinking about? What is she thinking about? her tryst with Laugh. All right, and who is she mad at for figuring out this secret? Laugh. All right, so we find out about Dewey Dell that she has had relations with Laugh. Communicates without words with Darl. And we learned that potentially Darl was in World War I, possibly. Okay, so we got a pretty good amount of info from old Dewey Dell, right? Are y'all enjoying this so far? Kinda? What? We like doing it together? Well, I need y'all to finish reading through chapter 14. It's not either. There's 50-something chapters. Okay, so what I want you guys to do, is read through chapter 14, which is the Dewey Dell chapter. Okay, that way when we talk about this next week, I can move through it at a little bit of a faster pace. Okay. We are still going to talk about each chapter, and I am going to point out specific passages that are important, but that way we can kind of move on a little bit faster. Cool?